Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neil. I'm joined by Annette O'Toole of Stephen King's It, Paul Schrader's Cat People, and all kinds of cool stuff. We Go On, the remastered version, comes out May 21st. And this movie was super. I loved it. It was great. And not just because you're here. I thought it was a really interesting idea behind it. Like someone paying someone to prove that there's life after death.
Right. Yeah. It's not your normal horror film, and I know it doesn't have as many scary moments as some people would like, but it's very unique. That's what I loved about it. It was because I don't like horror. I don't, I'm too much of a, I'm too scared. So, but I like this kind of stuff where suddenly there's like, oh, that moment, like we have maybe four good ones of that. But
Yeah.
it's about, it's character driven. That it's my kind of horror film.
Well, I think horror is a really broad term. There's all different kinds of horror movies, and within the genre horror, sci-fi, you can go into different territory. You can like ask questions that maybe you can in a regular movie.
Of course, that's what I loved about this. I loved the script when I first read it. Andy Mitton's script. It was based on an idea he and Jesse Holland had, who are the directors, and it was just very intriguing. Is there life after death? It's like, and I think I like it because it gives you an answer. I mean, they have a point of view, and they present it, and I love that. It's not like, oh, it's ever whatever you think. You decide. It's like, no, I want the film to decide so I can look at it, and and it does that.
Yeah. So, what was that like to have co-directors?
It was the first time I'd ever experienced that, and it was actually one of the reasons I wanted, besides the wonderful script, it was one of the reasons I wanted to do the film, because I thought, how do I do this? And the thing is, everybody does it different, or not everybody, but the people who co-direct do it differently. And I've worked with a couple of teams since then, and I've noticed how different each set of people is. And Jesse and Andy had an interesting way of always alternating scenes, no matter what. Jesse tends to be more of a technical, camera person, and Andy, and in my experience, Andy tended to be more about what was going on in the scene and the character stuff. So it was interesting to see how it would how they would react when one of them had a scene that was, when Jesse had a more character driven scene to do, and they never varied. They never didn't do it that way. So it was really interesting.
Yeah. You talked about you maybe not being a big horror fan, but this movie's character driven. When you take on a horror movie, do you approach a character any different, or do you just it doesn't matter the genre of the movie?
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And I love Stephen King. So you brought up it. I was so happy to be part of that. And I think that one works too, because it's so character driven.
Yeah.
Everybody's petrified of Pennywise. And we have to do something about it, even though we're so scared. We're the only ones who can do it. So I love that, when you have no choice but to be brave.
Yeah. There's a couple quick questions about it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Did
I'd
you
love
and
to.
Oh, cool. So, did you and Emily Perkins like spend any time together to get like similar mannerisms to play Beverly Marsh at different ages?
We didn't have time to do that, although we met early on, and I kind of, I think they had shot more of the kids stuff early on, and so I watched her a bit so I could mimic her. But one thing that kind of, people who watch it and know it probably picked up on this. I was practicing with a slingshot a lot,
Oh,
because
interesting.
because I wanted to be able to look like I really could do it. And when it came time to do it, I was already doing it. And the prop guy said, you're doing that the opposite way from how Emily does it. I said, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. It never occurred to me, because she was right-handed and I'm right-handed, but I was doing it left-handed, because every once in a while I do some things left-handed. So, I was so upset about that. But I thought, you know what? Beverly has no choice sometimes. When she picks it up, it has to do it quickly. She can do it ambidextrously. So
Yeah.
she's so good with it. She shoots either way. So that made me feel I
I
justified it
like the
for myself.
explanation. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just had to. I'd already been shot doing it,
Yeah.
film doing it.
And do you have any thoughts on the end with the spider? That's something that that people
Oh,
talk a lot about.
yeah, we all hated it. we all were in the cavern that they built for us on this Vancouver soundstage, saying, you know, we're battling an Alaskan king crab. That's basically what we were saying.
Yeah.
Like I said, Tim is so scary. How could anything be scarier than Tim? So we all felt the same way. You know, now it's so much later we can actually say what we felt.
Right. I
But
think it's
yeah, we
as I read the novel, big fan of Stephen King. It's the ending is almost impossible to film, I think, because the dead lights or whatever scares you the most. So how do you actually film that? I think.
exactly. I know. I guess as each year goes by and they can do more with CGI, but then it's CGI. That's the thing. To me,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
CGI stuff is so mostly fake too, as real as it looks. It's like, yeah, this is not
Yeah, it
right.
doesn't age well. I always think even like bad practical effects has a charm to it, where like bad
Yeah,
CG is just bad. It's not even
yeah,
like entertaining.
I know. I watch Sven Guli's show pretty much every week. I'm a big fan of his, and I love watching those old movies and see, like in The Land That Time Forgot recently, the pterodactyls. Like, oh my god, I could have rigged up something better than that. Um, and it's just so awful, but it's part of the charm and part of the time that
Yeah.
it was done. And when you're a kid and watching those movies, it's like, oh, it's scary.
Yeah. Well, speaking of kids, what about Clark Freeman, who plays your son Miles?
Clark was great. I knew his sister Cassidy because she'd been on Smallville, and didn't have a lot to do together, but I'd met her and I really liked her. And we just kind of fell into this mother son thing right away. He and the directors came over to my house, and I made a big muffaletta sandwich, and we cut it up and we ate it, and we talked about the movie, and we just felt like we'd known each other for a long time. And the script is so clear. I just love Andy's writing in this script, and it was not hard to do. And then we spent a lot of time together, Clark and I, on set, because when you're doing an independent film, you're doing it very quickly, and there's you don't really have a dressing room. You're just all kind of dressing in this side area, so you get to know each other pretty quickly. And I just love him. I think he's a wonderful guy.
So you said you love the script, you like working on it. So when you see the finished movie, what did you think? Because I assume you've done movies sometimes where on set maybe you think it's going well. It depends how they edit it. Maybe it's better than you thought it was going to be, or it's worse than what is it going to be. So what did you think of the finished version?
That's exactly right. That's just how it is. It's very hard for me to watch myself, and so there are a lot of things I've done that I haven't seen, especially like the last 20 years or so. But I have seen this movie more probably than anything I've ever done. I think I've seen it 4 or 5 times, and I had to see it recently because we did the commentary for it.
Yeah.
And usually for me that would be like torture. But it was really fun, and I love doing it with Clark. Um, and it was great to watch it that way. You watch it with different eyes when you're remembering how the scene went and what you felt like that day and all the stuff that goes along with it. I don't know that I would ever listen to a commentary myself. I have done, but I find it, even a movie that I'm fascinated by now, or I love the director or something, it takes the joy of it away from me.
Sure is.
That feeling of just being taken over and pulled in by the movie. But that's just me. I know other people watch movies for all kinds of different reasons, and they're interested in different things. So anyway, watching this
It kind
movie was fun.
of takes away from it being a movie and more like the technical side of making it.
Yeah, but there are people who like that, and listen, to each his own.
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask about Paul Schrader. I had Paul Schrader on the show for the 40th anniversary of Cat People, and he was very
Uh-huh.
honest, probably way more honest than he was talking about stuff that I didn't even ask. But so anyway, he's really open about his affair with Natasha on the film, and the
Uh-huh.
Cat People is the movie that made him leave Hollywood. Was that obvious on set that they were having
No.
an affair, and did that affect
Uh-uh.
anything?
No. I didn't know, and no, I didn't know, and I didn't. It didn't affect a thing. There was more of a relationship kind of thing with John Hurd. That caused more. It didn't cause trouble. It was just I knew there was something going on with that. John was not feeling good about I think that he was coming through the way Paul wanted him to. It's a long time ago now, and I don't remember all
Yeah.
exactly. I had a great time doing that movie. We shot a lot of it in New Orleans, which you know since you talked to Paul. And my dear friend Eddie Begley, who gets his arm ripped off, that
Yeah.
was
I also had him on the show too, talking about it. He
did
was
you?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun to do because it was so real. I mean, he's my friend, and I was seeing it was so realistic getting the arm pulled off, and the way Eddie did it was just, it wasn't even acting for me. It was just like reacting to something that was really happening in front of me. Talk about stuff that works. That really worked to me.
Oh yeah.
And that
Definitely.
was, Eddie just had his arm pulled back, and they had this fake arm, and he was rigged up with blood and everything, and it's ripped off in front of me, and it really looked real. Oh my God, it was really scary.
It was weird when I had him on. It was the 40th anniversary of Cat People, and when Cat People was made, it was 40 years since the original Cat People.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh my God.
It's weird to
The
think like
original Cat
an
People
80s
is
movie is 40 years
such a different
ago.
movie.
Yeah, and a 40s movie seems like, even when I was alive in the 80s, that would seem like way before anything. And then it's weird to think that an 80s movie is now 40 years ago as well. So to tie that back to We Go On,
really, really weird.
yeah, I really like your character talks about maybe some of the positives if there isn't life after death, which you don't really see in movies. And one of the things is like, I don't want to spoil the movie, but maybe she's made mistakes, and if she won't have to account for them or whatever. But to for yourself, kind of like a legacy. So do you ever think about that? Like your films, which ones will be remembered throughout, when you're gone, and are just like, what movies would you have in your legacy that you would want people to remember?
What a good question. Well, this one's really a good one. And I did a movie with Martin Short called Cross My Heart, which was actually the most fun I ever had doing anything, I think. It's this third date that these people are on, and so it's basically just the two of us in this movie. They have other people come and go a little bit, but it's mostly just the two of us trying to deal with the fact that we're not being honest with one another, but we really have feelings for one another that go beyond just dating, that we may be a couple. And Marty was just so much fun to work with every day. And I just remember at the end of the day going home with my face aching because I'd been laughing and smiling all day long. It was like really painful. So that one, and that's one that not many people have seen or know about. Now, I haven't seen it in so long. I don't know if it holds up, but certainly one to check out maybe in my legacy. But, I think that I haven't done a lot of movies in my life. I've done mostly television, but the movies I've done have been, Smile is another one, my very first film by Michael Ritchie, brilliant director. That was fun because it was based on a real. He and the writer Jerry Belson had gone down to Santa Rosa to be judges in the Young American Miss pageant, and they got this idea to do this movie about a pageant on the state young, junior Miss level, and it's a really interesting satire, and that's a film that not many people know either. It's sort of a lost gem. It wasn't successful at the time, but I think it's certainly worth seeing. So that's in my legacy box.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out. And I have to bring this up because one of my favorite movies, and I don't want to lose my horror cred, but I'm a huge fan of A Mighty Wind. I have the soundtrack here. So writing for The Folksmen, what's like the balance? Because the movie's a mockumentary, but the music can play like straight. You can just listen to it and be like, oh, this is a real song. So you don't want them to be too over the top. Like when you're writing them, like what's that process like?
Well, that's exactly
To find
what
you know what I'm saying, like the balance.
What you think is a good. Yeah, you just want to make a good song. When we wrote, Michael and I wrote A Kiss at the End of the Rainbow, and we went to Chris Guest's house to perform it for him. At first he said, I think that's too straight a song. He said, he said, it's a beautiful song. I don't think it'll work. And his wife, Jamie Lee Curtis, was there, and she said, oh no, I think that's why it's so good. That's because you need a song that's going to be that song. So we were very lucky that he changed his mind. But we did go home and write another song called Closer Than Tomorrow that is it's also a really nice song. It's more like a Leaving on a Jet Plane kind of song. But and it's a real song too. But you know, like Potatoes in the Paddy Wagon, Michael and I rode in a car going from Portland to Seattle. Well, actually, we were going from Los Angeles to Vancouver. But between Portland and Seattle, I got the idea for this song. It was a melody that was in my head, just kind of stuck in my head, and we just put lyrics to it. And we weren't writing it for the movie; we were just fooling around. And he said, "Gosh, let's put some lyrics to it." And he just said, da, 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 "Potatoes in the paddy wagon," and I said, "Yeah, but potatoes got to be a girl. It's got to be the name of a girl." So we wrote the song about this girl, and then Chris said, "Yeah, I think that'll work for the new Main Street Singers." So, yeah, it was. But all those songs, you're right. I love that album because it's all the songs are real songs.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I love it. So I know I don't have a lot of time, but I wanted people to check out We Go On remastered, enhanced Blu-rays coming out May 21st. Also be digital. And again, I really like the movie, and I could tell that it's special to you since you were doing interviews and stuff about it, and I like that.
Very much so. I love this film. Well, thank you, Neil, for having me. I'm honored to be on your show and get to talk about other stuff, scary stuff that I've done.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this. Hopefully I can talk to you again sometime.
I hope so. Take care.
Yeah. You too. Bye.